Well, OPEC will discuss extending production cuts at a November meeting in Vienna, and that's coming from the United Arab Emirates Energy Minister Suhail al-Mazroui on Monday. OPEC and non-OPEC producers agreed to cut output in a historic deal last year, and this has boosted prices, which currently hover around $55 a barrel. In its last meeting on Friday, the agreement was extended for an additional 9 months until March next year. And OPEC members, Libya, Iran and Nigeria, were spared in the current deal. But Mazroui says OPEC will discuss imposing the quota system to countries that have so far been exempted. Oil and gas energy expert Bala Zakka joins me now to talk about the latest agreement that OPEC took on Friday and, of course, the deal, the talks, the discussions is going to have later in November. Many thanks for your time, Bala. Yes,
thank you.
The market seems well on its way towards rebalancing.
Correct.
And it seems that OPEC has been enjoying the disasters, if I would say, that's happening in the U.S., countries like the U.S. When we talk about the shale oil, of course, we know that the shale oil has been sabotaging efforts of OPEC. Now, with what we have, do you think it can be sustained? We have it hovering around $55 a barrel, and it's been firm for about 2 months now.
It's very, very possible. First of all, we need to look at it from this point. OPEC is actually a global energy and an economic cartel, apart from being a crude oil cartel. And there are so many reasons to justify that. One of the reasons is this. As we speak now, OPEC controls more than 1/3 of the daily crude oil production globally, right? OPEC holds or has the domiciliation or has the custody of more than 81% of the crude oil proved reserve. And when we talk about the crude oil reserves, we are talking about reserves in terms of crude oil you have there, which based on the existing technology, right, and reservoir characteristics of the wells in the OPEC 14 member countries, you can actually produce this crude oil with a high degree of certainty. So when you have a cartel that controls more than 85% of a world energy resources, especially, resource, in this case, fossil fuel, that cartel must be a strong cartel and will be able to play a role in determining how the pendulum is going to swing. So based on that, anytime OPEC speaks or OPEC coughs, other nations must listen. And in this case, whatever decision they arrive at, the world is likely to listen.
But many countries now, many Western countries, developed countries are talking about moving away from the use of crude oil. They're talking about electric cars now. Do you think with what we are having or with what we are hearing, the reports we've been seeing, how long do you think OPEC can actually control what you're talking about?
Well, let me explain that with this example. Crude oil and gas are basically fossil fuel, right? They drive energy. But as we speak today, most of the industrialized nations, right, generate energy from what? From coal. Coal is more toxic and carcinogenic as a pollutant compared to crude oil or natural gas. So if the industrialized nations still generate a greater part of their energy using a more carcinogenic pollutant compared to crude oil, that tells you that you have to phase out crude oil first, coal first, before thinking about tampering with crude oil or the distillates of crude oil, before even getting to another cleaner fossil fuel like natural gas that you can use to drive turbines. We all accept, even Nigeria is a signatory to the Paris treaty.
Agreement.
Nigeria is also a signatory to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, out of which one of them is to reduce greenhouse emission. But when you say you want to stop internal combustion engines, you are only tampering with only one distillate of crude oil, or two, basically petrol and diesel. There are more than 1,001 products that you can get out of crude oil.
All right, let's get back to focus now. That's talking about Nigeria. Nigeria, Libya, Iran have been exempted. Now
Correct.
They have been spared again. Now, very briefly, let me get it from you. What's the story going to be going forward? I know they're going to determine if they're going to extend that quota, impose that quota to them again by November. But for now, what's the story going forward for Nigeria? There must have been lessons learned.
Yeah, first of all, you see, OPEC is a cartel, right? A very strong energy and an economic cartel. Nigeria, Iraq, Iran, Libya are under the umbrella of OPEC. It is in the interest of Nigeria, Iran, Iraq, Libya, and the rest that OPEC remains very strong. And that simply means they will be ready to comply with whatever decision the overall 14-member countries decide. But in situations like this, they are not looking at their own personal interests as individual countries. They are looking at the overall interest of that cartel called OPEC. Once in a while, you can get hurt when you are making selfless sacrifice. But don't also forget that what happened was they were given this opportunity to keep producing because they have experienced what we call disruptions due to different climate hostilities. Some had to do with wars, some had to do with probably internal hostilities. So
hopefully Nigeria would take the positives out of this, because yes, we're talking about diversification.
Yes.
Hopefully would not solely focus on what we are gaining now, because we have to think about the future.
We have to think about the future, but I can tell you, as far as crude oil is concerned, it's going to still remain a major source of energy. When you say you're going green, right, when you're saying you're going to have electric stations, how do you drive those electric stations? You're still going to use generators. How do you drive the generators? You're still going to use distillates. And like as we're talking, it's just petrol and diesel. Even the aircrafts use kerosene. There are 1,001 products or distillates you can get out of crude oil. So crude oil as fossil fuel, natural gas as fossil fuel will remain energy in many years and centuries to come.
All right, oil and gas experts, Bala Zakka, we have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming to the studio to talk to us on Business Tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.